Welcome to The Real Deal, where we get real about what it takes to succeed. Whether it's wealth, health, relationships, or finding your purpose, we talk to the masters to uncover the secrets to defying the odds and creating your own rock star legacy. I'm Doug, and after working on multiple Grammy-winning records as an author, transformational speaker, and your personal translightenment coach, I'm committed to your growth and success. And now, here's the real deal.
All right. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, are you feeling challenged? Are you feeling anxious? Maybe a little depressed, stressed out? Are you waking up with night terrors? Well, then GuidedHypnotic.com is for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Guided Hypnotic. Bust your anxiety with your free download of your Guided Hypnotic meditation at GuidedHypnotic.com. This sponsored by, we got to give the sponsors. And today you're going to get the best introduction you've had all day. The best. Here we go. Rick Hulse, highly effective and experienced executive with a demonstrated and successful history of working in the management consulting industry, skilled in enterprise business strategy coaching, business planning, analytical skills, operations management, and leadership coaching. Strong enterprise business development executive with intensive international expertise, holding a BS, that's Bachelor of Science, right? Business, economics, and finance from the State University of New York College at Oneonta. Giving a little background, Rick and I went to the same elementary school, and probably the last time we saw each other, he was beating the crap out of me. This is a true story. I don't know what led up to it. I do remember the moment because you were then, and I imagine now, what are you, over 6 feet tall?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not. And I think back then you were as well equally taller and larger than I. And I remember the moment when I was going to stand up to you in that moment and regretted it immediately. But then you went off to another school. And so I licked my wounds and we didn't really see each other much after that. And then out of the blue, it was like 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, you reached out to me. We were connected on Facebook or whatever. And then you reached out and I was like, holy crap, you got, a lot of great stuff going on. And I was happy to share any resources. And it, at first when I saw your calls or you reached out, I was like, why is why I didn't quite get why you were reaching out, and then it turned out, and then we've been connected since, and it's been a great blossoming friendship. But I just thought I'd pre-frame with that because sometimes we have we've reinvented our relationship. Just wanted to kind of pre-frame with that as we dig a little bit deeper, so maybe some people can know that they could heal relationships from the past as well.
Yeah, it intrigued me what you were doing, and I think Facebook is a platform. It's been great personally for me to reconnect people who I've grown up with or stay in touch with, folks that I don't see all the time. But some of the content that you were posting and the description of kind of what your journey was really intriguing. Everyone has their own journey. There's no such thing as perfection, and I kind of started to follow what you were doing. And it resonated with me. And that's really why I reached out to you. And it's funny, the first time I did reach out to you, I had thought about you many, many times. I had told stories to friends and family and my son when he was growing up about, how I got in a fight when I was in 7th grade with this kid, Doug, and how different we were. And, I was kind of a big, somewhat quiet kid. And I remember you kind of being brash and out there and kind of rebellious and you, I won't say you antagonized me, but you were definitely, somewhat type A. And for whatever reason, we had a grind, and it came to a fight one day after the cafeteria. And I remember Mr. Bush, the gym teacher, breaking us up and sending us to the office and all that other stuff. And it was one of those life events you never forget. But the weird thing is I always liked you. You were so different than me. Even the way we looked was so different. You know, I was this shy, preppy kid, you know, tall and dorky. And you were this like outgoing rocker type dude. And from the outside, you know, you came across as somewhat invincible and gregarious. So it was just one of those experiences you just don't forget.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad we're able to, you know, obviously have these conversations because some people don't get to. Truth is, you know, it's so interesting you say that because that's not how I felt. Like I felt like a dorky. Still to this day, I feel awkward and uncomfortable sometimes, but then I just let that go because I'm still human. I always feel like an outcast to some degree. But growing up, like my entire, like even high school, like I was kicked out of every high school as well, but I always felt like not invincible. I always felt like awkward and uncomfortable. And then I didn't want to go to my 20th. I didn't want to go to any reunion until I was a rock star. Like that was I wanted to come back and show everybody. And of course, my level of success didn't achieve rock star status, but I did pretty well. But I remember coming back to a thing and I heard a similar thing from someone that I hadn't, you know, I don't even like remember if we had any issues. I just always felt like no one liked me or appreciated me or anything. And they said something similar, like, man, I just always loved the way you just were self-expressed and whatever. And I'm like, holy crap, that is not how I felt. Yeah. And it's so interesting how that perception, how we think people think different things. And,
we presume things and everyone has this shell. And I've just learned, like, if you get to know someone pretty well, you know, what you perceive and what reality is often two different things.
Yeah, more often than not. And now, especially today in, with social media or marketing, sure. So there's so much perception where there's, maybe less meat. I know I need to improve my marketing skills. So kind of what you see is what you get with me. And generally speaking, with humility, I think usually what Heidi and I deliver is actually more than what you might think based on what we share. But so that is awesome that we're able to do that. So what happened after that? You went off to another school. You guys moved. How did because I went to Chaminade after 7th grade, so I didn't come back until I got kicked out of Chaminade in 8th grade, and I don't recall if you were there anymore at that point.
So in middle school, at the end of middle school, my parents got divorced, and there was, there was a history of addiction in our family, mm-hmm. which really was the catalyst for the divorce. Now that I look back at it. And for a little while, I went to Ward Melville High School out in Suffolk County, where one of my parents had bought another home. And my other parents still lived in Garden City. And I only stayed there for about 6 months. And I realized just how different things were, kind of what a bubble we grew up in Garden City, how different that was than, the rest of the world and even the rest of Long Island, New York, where we lived. And I really felt uncomfortable. So, I went and lived. I was the only sibling that went and lived with the other parent. And I went back to Garden City, but I never really spent a lot of time there. I went to school there, and we had a home, like a family home in upstate New York, and in Cooperstown here, in fact. And that's where I spent holidays and summers and things like that. And I've tried to get that connection with my friends at Garden City. Never really had that connection again because I really wasn't there a lot to participate in the school activities and sports and things like that. So,
or the parties, get arrested together, all of those.
I just never did that stuff, And but I developed a great set of friends here in Cooperstown, and they became my high school friends. And then went off to college, went to St. Bonaventure, and had my own issue there. I did well for the most part, academically, But behavior-wise, I think I experienced something similar to what you experienced at Chaminade. I was at a Catholic college and made some bad decisions and was asked to not live on campus anymore. And at that point, I decided that probably I need to get a fresh start. I went to Oneonta, and it was a great experience for me. There were a lot of kids from Long Island there, and a diverse set of kids from all backgrounds, which was something, as you know, in Garden City, that's not something we were really exposed to there. It was pretty insular.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, even when we look at like all the interesting challenges going on now, like, Heidi would be like, what did you? And I said, I didn't, like, we didn't have, like, we had a few people of color in our school. We never treated them any different. They were just there. There was never really a thing. The only potential issues we had were like, don't hang out in Hempstead too much.
Right. Yeah,
but that was it. There was never, we were insular, but not like, ooh, bad people. As a matter of fact, I was sharing with Heidi, I was like, I'll be honest with you, I felt ostracized because I lived in Garden City. So when I hung out, when I would try and go to Hicksville, or I wanted to go to any others, it's, rich kid from Garden. Like, I was the one who was being, like, looked down upon because I came from, Garden City. And I said, honey, we were the poor kids in Garden City.
It was a weird, it was almost like it was insular. You're right. There was a certain degree of kind of reverse, I don't know what you want to call it, but it was, but I don't know. It was a good experience for me. It was definitely a safe experience, but I learned so much more about the world once I went to Oneonta, and all the different types of folks with different backgrounds, and became friends with them. And frankly, like you said, never looked at these folks as, that's a Jewish person, or that's a Asian person, or that's a black guy or a girl. It just never. They were friends, I guess. Yeah. That's the best way to describe it. And we were all there for the same reasons. Some were studying to be teachers, some were studying to be accountants or financial folks, or whatever they were there for. And it was just a cool feeling. Everyone's kind of in the same boat. And then as college ended, everyone kind of went their own path based on career. And but for me, it was a great experience, and it helped me grow quite a bit, being in such a diverse environment.
Beautiful. And then, so how did you get into, because when you reached out to me and then we started talking about, like, kind of what you were doing and what I was doing, you were doing some pretty, like, high level, very strategic, like, crazy kind of consulting that is just, obviously amazing and very admirable and honorable. How did you get into that? Like, what was your path to get into what you're doing now?
That's a good question. So out of college, when you and I, back in 1992, when I graduated from Oneonta, things were different. I think the economy wasn't really that great. However, technology was sexy at that time. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. My dad worked in the Wall Street sector, and he enjoyed his work and he loved it. And I interviewed with some folks within his network, and there were some opportunities for me to work at some of those organizations. But I didn't feel that burn to want to go do that, because I had witnessed my dad and the kind of the sacrifices he made from a work-life balance standpoint that I don't think I wanted to do, and I know I was young, and for whatever reason I went with my gut, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and a friend of ours ran a large insurer here in New York and said, hey, let me put you through a management training program, and you'll get to learn the different aspects of what this business is all about. And it's a year long, and you can see what it's like. And I did it, and I learned a lot. And I also learned I didn't want to be in an office every day, the same thing every day. And a gentleman locally here ran a publisher's rep organization. Believe it or not, there were two of them in Cooperstown. And I got to work with some really neat publishers that that publish titles that everyone has seen on the newsstand. And I got to work with really cool folks that represented brands like, Absolute Vodka or, Revere and things like that. And I was just thrown into it and I loved it. And the gentleman that I worked for had a ton of passion and a ton of experience. And it allowed me to be able to just have a conversation with anybody. And it was all around listening. And a precursor to this is right after college, my dad had sent all of his employees to a school where you learn the Socratic method and Socratic listening and Socratic presentation skills. And it's something that spoke to me, being able to ask these open-ended questions, listen to people, understand their circumstances. And it allowed me to create a bond with people, a genuine bond that they felt I understood their circumstance. And if there was an opportunity for me to help them, I could align that with what they just described to me. So I applied that while being a publisher's rep, and out of the blue, my stepmother at the time was a recruiter. And there was, this company, Oracle, which everyone knows now. They weren't as big as they are now, but they were looking for people to help them with their channel program, the people that were doing consulting out there. And I learned a lot about that space. And there was a company called Citrix, actually headquartered in Florida. And they were a small company at the time. There were only 200 people, I think, at the time. And there was this guy, Mark Templeton, who was the CEO. And I started following him, and I noticed that all of our big, gigantic deals at Oracle involved this little company called Citrix, right? And I went to work for a company that did, they worked in the tool space and big data centers. And then finally, I said, something, RPI had a tech park and an incubator park. And I hooked up with a consulting group that did consulting around server-based computing. And it really just took off from there. I got to work with some of the largest companies in the world that were evaluating and implementing Citrix, and developed a relationship with Citrix, the company, and understood the mantra of the way they delivered consulting. I got to advise on how they delivered consulting. I got to, on an acquaintance level, got to know Mark Templeton, the CEO. A lot of the projects that I was involved with would be mentioned in their call to the street to let them know what they're doing and deals that are coming. So it just exposed me to a lot of things very early on in life. And I started realizing that the consulting side of things, just like in personal life, if you don't have your house in order, you can buy anything that tells you your life's going to be better. But if your house isn't in order, it's just going to help you maybe make a bad decision quicker or make more bad decisions, or whatever you bought you're never going to leverage the full utility of why you bought it or the perception of why you should buy it. And so I started realizing that. And a friend of mine who was, in between there, I was involved in some startups, some of which were sold and things like that were very early on. For example, in the server-based hosting environment, where today Office 365 is a given. People don't, it's hosted for them, and their updates are delivered remotely using Citrix. We had a data center, and for small to medium-sized businesses that couldn't really afford an IT department, we would deliver all of their desktop applications over the internet using Citrix. And it was really early on, but people loved it. And that company was sold. We sold that. But, moving on from that, it was a learning experience. What did I want to do? And I saw that in the corporate space, the consulting, getting your house in order was more important than ever because they're dealing in big dollars.
You're muted. You're muted. What happened here? Can I unmute you? There you go. You there?
Still hear me?
Nope.
Hold on for a second. There's someone trying to call in.
There
Am
you
I
go.
back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
So I heard lost you at big dollars.
Yeah, so the organizations, the big corporate organizations, big dollars, and the idea of helping them from an operational excellence standpoint. A friend of mine was just getting into that space and wanted to develop a business practice around it. And we did things like grow the Operational Excellence Society, for example, which had chapters all around the world, a big LinkedIn presence. And through that organization, we were able to connect with, the largest paper companies in the world globally, oil and gas companies, manufacturers, defense contractors, and things like that. And, what we learned quickly, and this is an old saying in consulting, is common sense is not so common. And getting alignment and buy-in and support from leadership is probably one of the most difficult tasks at a large organization, and also sustaining it. So that's how kind of my path developed, and every day is a learning experience. But the most gratifying thing is taking a lesson learned from interacting with one of these clients from the past and saying, I could apply that to what this challenge is right now that this person's explaining to me. And it's really rewarding. I mean, I really, really love what I do. And I think people sense that too, that I really, really love what I do. And I'm genuine, I'm passionate, and I love to see people succeed. So whether it's folks that I'm, a group that I'm helping to succeed, or an individual, it's really rewarding.
Well, I mean, that's very clear. And you obviously have mastery, because sometimes when we talk, I need you to explain what was that? Because you're on such a high level of, you clearly got it. So sometimes your level of expertise goes a little bit over my head, and I go, whoa, hold on, bring that down. And that is obviously from all the years of experience that you have, and the application, the questions that you ask, you have vast knowledge. Share how, like, startups, I know a lot of people, it sounds sexy. And my understanding of the amount of businesses that succeed, that startups that succeed, it's also very risky, which is why obviously you want to put your house in order, get your teams together, and make sure you're doing it appropriately. What kind of goes through your head as far as navigating or mitigating any fears, challenges? Sometimes have you had people kind of come in and say, dude, that's not it's not going to be a good venture, and things that maybe when you didn't listen and you made a success, or maybe you did listen and then it turned into a success that slipped through your fingers? Did you have any of those types of experiences?
Yeah. So, for example, there's nothing sexy about a startup. It's if there's an allure for you around starting up a business because you think it's sexy, don't go into it.
Right.
Don't do it. Right. So what I've learned is it's usually something that's somewhat of a boring product or service that people don't realize that they have a need for. They haven't been educated on that they have a need for it. There's also, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The blue ocean are those things, right? Someone says, wow, I wish I had thought of that. And then there's the red ocean, where people want to get into low margin, commodity based business or service, which are usually short lived, unless there's some type of market consolidation where you can control it and roll it up underneath you so you can control that market. But still, it's relatively low margin, high volume. But your gut tells you, after you've spoken to a lot of people, that it's usually the people that are just kind of heads down, grinding it out, put in endless hours, start businesses on their credit cards. They don't give up control to investors, things like that. There's a lot of red flags that I'll hear early on in a conversation that'll let me know if this is on a good path or a questionable path for someone that's considering doing that.
So what would be some red flags that if there's some startups or small business owners right now that maybe they're doing, you say, oh, you might want to pivot and find another strategy?
The first thing is find a good wingman or wing person, right? So to think that you can do this all by yourself is unrealistic. You have to have someone that's going to help shepherd things with you along, and you got to learn how to delegate. If I sense that someone's very close and they can't delegate, that tells me that business will be short-lived or very limited in its opportunity for growth. That's a big red flag. It's trust. It's understanding yourself as an individual, as an entrepreneur. If you really understand yourself and your limitations, then you can really, really appreciate bringing in someone. And it's okay if there's someone that wants to be they want to celebrate the success of the business, whether there's a partner or however it's structured. But knowing what you need and how to identify it early on, that's really critical. Otherwise, you're always reacting to a market condition or a competitor. It really prevents you from being proactive if you can't identify those weaknesses and bring in additional people, capacity, who are good at that can help guide you and mentor you in those areas.
Right. And now, would you say now you focus more on startups or more on established organizations?
I love established organizations. The startup space, I would probably transition to almost doing startup pro bono for people, maybe later on in life. But it's I like the established businesses. I like the large publicly traded multinational companies. Are interesting, but it's usually that SMB, small to medium-sized business, established, they have the most opportunity for growth. And I can tell real quick. There's a litmus test from a brand standpoint, from a market position standpoint, competition. There's a little calculation, if you will, that I leverage to kind of gauge where are they. And there's the folks that I would say the privilege to work with, they know what they're really good at, and they really know where they want to go, and they want to get started on that journey. They want to grow, they want to delegate. That would be the DNA of the type of company that I like to work with.
So, as a consultant, I know I'm sure that there's that element of the brand awareness that you shared, that sometimes we see these these large companies and multinational companies that are, everybody knows, everybody's heard of. And then all these small to medium business, there's so many of them that most people have never heard of that are bringing in and employing hundreds of thousands of people potentially, if not, of course, thousands, and having a huge impact on their community and so forth. How do you navigate that? As you shared your litmus test, it's surprising how many businesses there are out there that we've never heard of that are doing phenomenal things.
Yeah, they're operating in a space where those big publicly traded multinationals cannot operate effectively and efficiently. That's the key to it.
So are there different sectors because it's not even a similar vertical, or is it they're somewhat competitors, they just can't be as effective?
They can't be as effective, and if it's the old saying, right? You can't be all things to all people. Right. So if you're in a niche, a high value niche with a good brand, you're gonna quickly find that if you engage with your marketplace, engage with your clients, and understand it, and then align your messaging with that it's going to resonate. They're going to listen. They're going to understand real quick that what you do, high value to their business, high value to the goals and objectives that they've established for their business.
Right on. So you shared earlier about engagement and the CEOs and so forth. As a consultant, and I've had this challenge as well sometimes, is getting the buy-in from the CEOs, the ones who I could do it all myself. What are some of the maybe challenges you've had in dealing with getting high-level buy-in? Because obviously the mindset necessary to create that has to have a certain amount of like certainty and confidence that they could do it. So there's always that potential obstacle. How do you navigate that?
That's a good question. So early on in our conversation today, I had a perception of you when we were young, right? And there's a perception of executives at companies, big, powerful people. Well, newsflash, they're just people. They're just like you and me. They have their own fears. They have their own insecurities. They have their own passions about things. And I mentioned earlier, engaging in a Socratic dialogue is highly effective. When you're not necessarily selling anything to anybody. You want to understand what they want to do and what they believe their challenges are, and ask them why. Why do you feel that way? Why is that an issue? Tell me more about that, and really have them explain to you kind of what that current state is in their mind, in the business. And it's not necessarily selling them or getting their buy-in. It's helping them understand that there's potential here for your organization, for you and your role. There's an acronym called WIFM, right? What's in it for me? And a lot of humans, every human, they kind of lead their life.
Oh, lost you again.
And I'm back.
Yep.
Someone call me.
Okay.
But so understanding what is driving them. Now, what's in it for me from an executive standpoint? It could be, some type of reward, socially, financially, whatever it is, for whatever the mission, goal, and objective is for their business. And the challenges could be, most of the time, the challenge is alignment and communication and buy-in. And then the changes that you make, are they sustainable? Can they be replicated? And then through replication, can it be driven deeper into the organization? And there's companies out there that people scratch their head, like you said, there's these companies we've never heard of, and you wonder why they're so successful. They're juggernauts in their own way. They have this culture about them. People will point to like an Elon Musk and some of his companies and things like that. But it's palatable. It's like Apple, for example. When you're there at that company, there's no doubt that there's a way and there's a culture there, and that's what drives their innovation, their alignment with the voice of their customers, and the like. So it's when you get there, those are the companies that all of a sudden you see explode onto the scene. It's because I've used the term, they have violent alignment, violent agreement internally that this is our mission, this is what we're doing, this is why it's important. This is why it's important professionally for me as an individual, personally, financially, and there's a genuine belief, and rightly so in most cases, that what they're doing is going to help. It's going to help an individual, it's going to help another organization. If I think back to the days with Citrix, the concept of server-based computing was basically just a rebranding of mainframe computing. But the way it was delivered was, any application, any device, over any connection, anywhere in the world. And it didn't sound like a big deal back then, but people loved the idea because it was easy to manage. Fast forward to today and everything that's been going on in the last 3 months. Well, companies like Zoom and Citrix, Citrix owns GoToMeeting and all that. And you see how important that is to people's lives, to be able to stay connected and work remotely and securely and things like that. So I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, well, it was trying to get into that idea of connecting with the CEO or the decision maker to bring a product. And the challenge sometimes becomes if they think that they're already doing what you can bring. And like, as an example, you talked about the violent alignment. To me, that is aligned mission, vision, and values, of course, as part of the process, and to what degree. I'm hallucinating that a company that would usually connect with you may already have some of that in place, and they're looking to move the needle, like to because they're already smart, right? And that's the challenge. Like, a smart company that gets to that point knows they need to bring people in. Do you see any patterns in what you bring and where the gaps are.
Yeah. Well, there's one canary in the coal mine that I can point to, and it's commitment. So those CEOs, those leaders are committed, unequivocally committed to sustaining and growing their organization. And it's obvious because they've gotten to a certain point, and there's a trajectory that they have. And they've gotten to that point, and they're committed that they're going to sustain and grow it. And you can tell in a conversation if someone's committed. And you ask them those open-ended questions about how they got there, kind of like what we're talking about now. And you'll sense really, really quick, yeah, this person is committed. They're serious about it. And then the other traits as far as delegation and trust, all of those other kind of telltales are there. And that's kind of that's the indicator from my perspective that this is a good situation and this is someone that really is committed to growing the organization, and they're typically a servant leader. I know that's kind of a fashionable term, but if there's one thing that I've learned, and it's just through experience, this is not something that was preached to me in some college class. Servant leaders are able to rapidly get things done. They know the importance of the team seeing that they're personally invested in the team succeeding. Okay. And granted, everybody wants in a team, if it's sales, for example, if you have really good sales resources, they all want to be the top eagle. They all want to succeed. They all want to hit their goals and things like that. But there's a sense of camaraderie, and if you have the right people in the boat, they understand how much stronger and successful they can be if they've got this team around them supporting them that share those values, and if they have a leader that is going to say, I'm there for you. What do you need? How can I help? Are there any roadblocks? Things like that. And more importantly, when you ask those questions, take action on it. So people see that, something, this is not just lip service that I'm getting. This person is going to take they're going to take action and help.
And that's huge. And what's so interesting as we have this conversation is a company is just like a person. It's just a macrocosm of the microcosm of a person. We all have those parts. To be successful, you've got to be committed. You've got to be able to know your strengths and, celebrate your strengths and, find someone to fill the gap on your weaknesses and not have an ego about it. That doesn't make you a bad person or unsuccessful or anything. It actually makes you, and that's the dichotomy that we all run, is that vulnerability to go, hey, you know what? That's not my strong suit. That's not my strong suit. My strengths are in X and I need to leverage Y and celebrate that person when they bring whatever that is. Absolutely. And I'm sure you've had that happen. Those servant leaders will give you and your organization credit for whatever contributions, whatever awareness, whatever support and service. They would, give you the accolades and thank you and say, wow, if it wasn't for Rick and it wasn't for the, what's the name of your company?
Richmond, McCabe and Clark.
Richmond, McCabe and Clark. If it wasn't for, Richmond, McCabe and Clark, we would be plateauing instead of growing the rate that we are. That's
an interesting point. Way back when I started getting on LinkedIn and connecting professionally with people on that platform, there were some folks that, there's the recommendations tab, and I didn't think much of it. And actually, I was kind of shy about it. I'm like, gosh, do I really want to bug these folks? These are clients, right? And we had a business relationship, and LinkedIn is kind of a personal relationship on an individual level. But I was really surprised and frankly humbled by some of the things that people would say unsolicited. We basically, when you work with someone and it's very intense, especially with some of these large organizations, you become friends with these people. You connect with them and you kind of understand all the different pressures that they have at work and at home and just in general. And it's when someone sends something like that to you unsolicited, it's a learning experience. To have someone say how you impacted them as an individual or their organization, for me, it was a validator that, yep, I'm doing the right thing. Being passionate about this is the right path for me. So yeah, it made me feel really good. That's an example of, over the years, people say things like that, and the feedback that you get makes you feel like you're really making a difference. I know that sounds so corny, but
Well, the psycho remuneration is important. I mean, everybody needs it, and that's what a great leader will do, is know that they can give credit to someone and give them, that feeling that, I mean, it's one of our needs, that significance, to go, okay, cool, I've been acknowledged, I add value. Because that's the worst thing for leaders. It's one of the things that the work I do is similar to yours, and I'm working with a leader, is supporting them in making sure that they're appreciating the hard work and the, how people go above and beyond, because if you don't acknowledge it, they'll stop doing it.
Yeah, I learned that at the large organizations, if leadership doesn't have some type of recognition, formalized program for the folks that are helping them achieve these goals, people are much less inspired to be committed. I used that term before, to be committed to getting things done. And frankly, at large organizations, people put in, everyone does, but especially at these large organizations, people are trying to get ahead. They're putting in long hours, lots of travel, working on a weekend, being away from their family and kids. And if you don't recognize that, or if you just decide to, radically change direction every 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. And without talking to your team and kind of going,
exactly.
Hey, what do you guys think? Where do you see challenges?
Yeah, you're going to lose the commitment ASAP.
Yep.
So, and that's just what I learned. I'm not preaching that. That's from experience. And I've had folks over the years that, I'll come in and, I'm sponsored by the executives at the company. And, you have those initial meet and greets, and you'll sit down and they'll say, hey, do you mind if I close the door? And they close the door and you get ready to get unloaded on. And they're going to say things like, we did this 30 years ago, or we've done this 3 times in the last 30 years. Why is this different? I've invested boom, 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 time away from my family, travel, and you really get to hear people's frustration. The leadership may have changed in those, 4 times in those 30 years, and direction and all this other stuff, and start to really understand that kind of that situation, that person, and these organizations, that's a perfect example that you gave before, is these are just large organisms of humans.
Yep.
That's all they are. And once you damage that, it's really hard to recover from, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like heart muscle. A heart attack, you lose part of that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true, is finding organizations that appreciate their most, valuable asset, which is their human capital.
Yeah.
Very often
I've seen large organizations, they can see the vulnerability in one of their competitors because of that. And you see the wheels start to spin on how they're either going to take them out or acquire them when they're at their weakest point. And it's, it's not a science. You can smell it from a mile away. You can see it from a mile away when the organization's weak. So
with that being said, there's going to be some interesting times ahead with that. Now, I know it's probably, we're coming up on time here. It's just the last couple of minutes here. And I know it's probably we could have a larger conversation about this. What do you think most companies are going to be doing as they start pulling back out? Do you think, the smart ones will invest and bring on consultants, bring on coaches, help unify? Or are you thinking it might be so far into the red that they're just in survival, cut as much as possible to just,
It depends on the market segment, and it depends on the type of reserves that these companies have. But for the small to medium sized business, and medium, I mean up to $500 million in revenue, they're going to have to really focus. They're going to have to invest. They're going to have to be the level of intensity of coming out of this. You need to create that inertia. You can't respond. You have to be proactive. You have to engage with your market, engage with your clients, engage with your employees. It has to be stepped up probably tenfold, because we've never experienced this before, where things have just been flat out shut down. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of businesses that don't recover, that are in the service industry, for example. You'll see a large consolidation in consulting. You'll see some of the senior consultants just completely leave the market because they're saying to themselves, I'm 65, I'm 60, I'm not going to do this anymore,
Right.
For lifestyle reasons, financial reasons, whatever. But for folks our age, there's a huge opportunity to help people stay focused and staying positive sounds kind of hokey. But if you really are committed and you believe in what you're doing, delivering a product or service, and you know that it's helping people, that I can't think of a better time to be more focused than now. Because if you don't do it, and if it doesn't occur, well, all those goals and objectives that were based on that were for nothing.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to hopefully some more opportunities to work with you and help with that mission, because I believe in people. I believe that, organizations, as we shared, are people run, and that if we can support the humanity, the, personhood of the organization, we can help the organization. Ultimately, my strengths are, in different areas, but I know that it's still on the human level. So yeah,
Absolutely.
It's going to be.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you having me on, Doug.
Oh, dude, this was, you're obviously one of the first people. I've only been doing this for a couple of weeks now, so you're, definitely someone I wanted to connect with and share, because you're doing amazing things, and I just I love and respect you as a brother, and I'm glad that we have that history. As interesting as it is, that's what makes it cool, right?
Absolutely.
It's an amazing thing. So how can we get in touch with you as we wrap up here? How can someone, if they wanted to learn more about you, about your organization?
Send me an email. Just send me an email, rhulse@rmcpartners.com.
rhulse@rmcpartners.com.
Exactly.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for dedicating your most valuable asset, which is your time. And I know with all things are starting to kick in right now, so I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to more rock with you. And of course, anything I can do to support you, I am here.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, brother. We'll see you very shortly.
All right. Good things ahead. Bye-bye.
God bless, man.
Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging with us. And remember to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts right here. And we look forward to serving you even more. Remember, download your free guided hypnotic meditation at guidedhypnotic.com. That's guidedhypnotic.com, where you'll get your free anxiety-busting meditation. We look forward to serving you, and if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out. All right, we love you for who you are and who you aren't. God bless.